Welcome to Clean Currents, where we talk with people driving change in clean energy. Today's guest is Lee DeLange, the founder of Big Red Oak. Lee went from cutting VHS tapes in high school to running one of Canada's leading creative agencies in the clean energy space. We talk about how he built the business, why storytelling matters in this industry, and how Big Red Oak helps clients tackle big, complex ideas with clarity and heart. Let's get into it. So Lee, I think we should start a little bit about your early background. One of the themes that we've been seeing in the conversation in these first set of episodes a lot is a variety of people's kind of history and their backgrounds and how they kind of come to where we are today in like clean energy or nuclear or anything around that. But there are some things that some threads that I like to pull on. Oftentimes there's a creativity in there which some people might not necessarily expect. Can you like elaborate a little bit on some of your early life and some of the things that maybe eventually led you to creating Big Red Oak?
Yeah, sure. Well, I was thinking about this because yeah, you sent me the questions ahead of time, so I was thinking a little bit, like the question, like where I got into production was, I like my background is in film, but if I think like back further, I like one of the things I remember was like I was in this like grade 12 sociology class, and we had like presentations to make, and I mean like in school you get used to making presentations, public speaking, whatever. And I knew that I wasn't very good at it, and I really didn't like doing it. So, I was taking like an English media class in high school as well. And so I thought of this idea of like, well, I'll just make some like videos instead of doing a presentation to the class. I'll make like a little mini documentary on the subject matter that I was dealing with. So in sociology, it was like can't even remember what the topic was, but instead of doing a presentation, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna book the camera out from the English media class, and I'm gonna create my own documentary. So this is all before like digital. This is all like linear, like VHS tape to tape, in an edit suite. And yeah, so I think that was kind of like the first way where I figured, okay, I can use video to tell a story and get myself out of doing a presentation and public speaking. So that was pretty good. And then, I think, uh, as I went to school for film. I specialized in post production sound and started working in the film industry proper. And by this time, it is all digital, so we're using computers. Um, and yeah, I think that was sort of like my first step in. I was, again, post production, so it's all sort of after the fact. The movie or TV show is concept is already developed, scripts written, it's shot, it's edited, and now we're doing the post production sound. So we were really at the end of the chain. And I think, I felt a little, while it was very, you know, eh, the craft is very specialized. You spend a lot of time like working on these soundtracks, special or like sound effects and music and foley and massaging the dialogue, all this. But it was sort of a very small part of that whole flow. It makes a big impact on the film or television show, but I didn't feel I was getting enough. So I think that's where I started freelancing on the side, still doing my sound editing job, but I was freelancing, doing corporate video. I was doing little projects for people. And very quickly I found that, oh, this actually can turn into a business. I could do this full time. So I left the film industry, and all the cachet that kind of came along with being in the film industry. Um, and yeah, started my own business really as a freelancer in my basement, shooting and editing, working for a lot of agencies. And I think just organically, the quality of work that I was putting out, uh, it's spread referrals, help grow the business. And I really started to build around that, started hiring other people who were, like-minded film nerds, and bringing that expertise to bear on the corporate world and really leaning into sort of storytelling through video making, um, production. So,
Yeah. There's so much in there too. It's like making the jump, right? Like you fairly artistic kid, you go to school, you go to film school. I think there's a lot of people that get into film school like, "I'm gonna go work in the film industry. I'm gonna make Hollywood movies," and in your case, like, you actually kind of flew close to the sun there. You were working on things that people actually saw, and you were in your own microcosm of the industry there, and then you decide to, in a lot of ways, as you say, transition and the cachet that comes with that's gone, and now you're doing something that I think a lot of people also misunderstood, which is like corporate video, B2B, like the commercial side. It's changing, but there's still kind of a stigma a little bit about that. But I think we've talked about it before, especially in the B2B space when you're working with organizations. There's actually a lot of room for storytelling, and that's something that you've brought up a few times here. When you created, well, it's now Big Red Oak, it was Flashframe then. When you created Flashframe and you're a video production company and you're starting to build a crew, talk to me a little bit about, like, those early experiences and how that shaped you as a storyteller and how that positioned you to, like, grow your business and, like, help
yeah.
clients.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think even in film, if I was going to, gravitate to a specific form of filmmaking, it was documentary that really grabbed, my or piqued my interest, as well as some of the, excuse me, some of the people that were on our team. We're all watching documentaries, and and I think we brought that sensibility and interest over into the corporate world, where we're digging deeper. We're trying to find the story. We're trying to find the drama and the intrigue, the engagement that's gonna captivate people. And we want to make this into little mini documentaries. And I think even in the approach from a strategic standpoint, which while back then we didn't know we were being strategic, but thinking, okay, we can serialize this, we can focus on specific themes for episode one, we can, bring out another theme in episode two, and we can sort of create this as an ongoing series. I mean, shoot ahead is like, wow, that was good thinking, with social media and that sort of always on necessity that you know that it sort of demands, I guess. It was a good approach, and really adapted to um to the needs of both consumer and B2B marketing.
It's interesting too because, if to contextualize it for people, like, when you're starting to build this business that becomes Big Red Oak, you're kinda riding that wave when, and you touched on it, like, social media starts becoming a thing, video is king, like, that's a phrase that started popping up everywhere, and, like, you guys rode that really well because that's what you excelled at, right? And there's a lot of value in that, and then there was a lot of value for you, like, "I know how to tell a story, I wanna work with you, I wanna create engaging content that will help, tell your story or sell your product or whatever it may be to whoever your audiences are." We we've seen that, video still remains king. It's still one of the preferred ways in which, like, businesses and people like to communicate, with the things like TikTok blowing up and Reels, and, like, every app these days is turning more and more video based. But you also transitioned the business. You renamed it from Flashframe to Big Red Oak. You went from being solely a video production company to this journey into being a full service agency. Why did you do that? Were those why what were those experiences that, like, led to you to shape the business into what it is now? Especially when we're talking about, like, video is king, but now we're doing other things here at Big Red Oak. Why was that important, and what kinda was the catalyst for
Yeah.
that?
I think, like, again, if I look back, like, a lot of the work that we were doing, we were white labeled under different marketing agencies and PR agencies. I think that like there was a shift that had naturally occurred, um, where we were kind of winding down some of the business with the agencies that we were working with, and we were building relationships with corporate clients directly. And so we're slowly and quite unintentionally, we were becoming the agency, not the white labeled video company. And so, when we brought that expertise, there was room for us to be able to like really, you know, pull up our pants and pull up our pants, pull up our socks. I don't know. We're gonna pull some stuff up and we're gonna like we're gonna we're gonna start providing strategy. We're gonna start thinking about the work that we're doing in a much more integrated manner. Now, creatively, I think that resonates because again, with that interesting documentary has the ability and very often is used in a mixed media format. So it's, sometimes it's bringing in animation, sometimes it's bringing in, photography, sort of slideshow or treatments. So, I think that still rang true, I think, in terms of the passion that we had from a creative standpoint in providing a mixed media. Now, from a strategic standpoint, we're looking at the marketing effort in a similar fashion, where we're piecing video with graphic design, with writing, and we're looking at the channel mix, the ways to distribute that content. So we're telling this story, but across so many different types of media and platforms from which to distribute. So I think it became like, I don't know, an overused, but like a holistic approach. But I think that it was still we're providing the overall strategy in terms of how to use media to tell a story and how to reach an audience. I think it all still is it's very anchored still in telling a good story to the audience and having them, have some sort of reaction, ideally the desired reaction that you want.
Well, let's put a pin in that for a second because I'm gonna thread a few things through these next few kind of questions here, and I want people listening to remember this. We're talking a lot about storytelling and the significance of that, and I think that's more of a universal theme. It doesn't really matter what you're trying to sell or what industry you're in, storytelling is important. But, like, to get to kind of the theme for the overall podcast and really nail into it, like, we're talking to a lot of people in the clean energy space. And now really recently, since I've been here in the last 3 years, we've really done a concerted push to change Big Red Oak into an agency, at least we in our own marketing, that is very much focused on clean energy. But that wasn't always the intent. That wasn't the intent when I joined. We were just servicing a wide variety of clients across multiple industries. Nuclear was our gateway in. That's the clients that we started with and started this whole journey to where we're at now. How did that happen? I know nobody or very few people ever dream of like, "Look, I'm starting X company or I'm starting an X career path because I wanna work in clean energy." Oftentimes, people come at it from different paths, and that's what kinda makes, I think, it a really rich tapestry, this industry and clean energy and everything, because you have people from various different backgrounds. For Big Red Oak, why? Why clean energy? How did this happen? And now that we're here, why is it become the focus?
Well, I think I've said a few times that there were quite a number of things in the business that were done unintentionally. I would say the business itself was unintentional. And I think in that, I think we were just sort of a merry band of creators that really didn't have any business acumen or any sort of understanding of how to build. So I think I don't know, I was just kind of lucky. I think that it had lasted so long. I had good people around me that were very dedicated to content creation, and bringing in smart people to help design strategy and how it fits in together. So I think it was a natural, like, it was very organic. We happened to do a project with a nuclear utility. And oftentimes, we would do a project and then we would do another project. And because the quality of our work is exceptional, and the experience of working with us, feel is good that their clients come back and do another project with us and do another project. And very, very quickly we started doing a lot of work with this utility. And by relation, we were working with some of the suppliers. I think we started getting more and more nuclear or clean energy clients. And so I think the one thing that we did more recently that was intentional was to actually focus and put a line in the sand, and this is our niche. This is the direction that we're going to go. I think, broadly clean energy, there are a number of different kind of businesses and companies and clients that we'll work with that sort of fall under that umbrella. But yeah, largely right now, a lot of that happens to be in nuclear, and the supply chain that helps support that industry.
For you, like, just peeling it back a little bit too, like, we talk a little bit about things not necessarily being telegraphed always in terms of how you've grown this business, but one of the constant things that we see here, and I think what sets Big Red Oak apart, not only as somebody who works here, but also for our clients, is this high focus on forging, actual relationships and partnerships, whether it's internally or externally. Like I said, with our fellow like teammates or with our clients. And this kind of idea of like from you of like leading with empathy. When you decide at Big Red Oak to go from servicing a variety of different clients to focusing in on clean energy, does that fundamentally shift how the business works? And, you know, did that change anything for you as somebody who's been doing this for a long time? Did it change anything about how you see the outlook of the business or where we're going?
No, I don't think so. I mean, again, like I kind of joke about it being intentional, and that I didn't really have the business acumen to drive things. I think, you know, a lot of the decision making and direction or the leadership that I've had in the business has really been on instinct and gut feel, which I would, say is really, in very close alignment to my own personal values. And that's really been the guiding light for me. So I think, as we've focused into nuclear, like, does that check against my values? Yeah, I think, like, having been in it, like, I mean, I had no idea what nuclear was about. I didn't know what it I think it was only by working closely we started to learn. I think not that it's a value, but it's sort of a, I don't know, it's an aspect that I think is inherent in our business, always has been, and is for all of the people who are a part of it, is this idea of curiosity. I think we're all learners. We all want to understand and derive some sort of meaning out of what we do or who we're working with or the project that we're working on. And, I think that as we're going into nuclear, it's like, oh my God, what is this? Like, let's figure it out. This is crazy. We're going into the station. It's a crazy place in there. Like, nothing like it's like nothing you've ever seen before. You're wearing hard hats and all sorts of like protective equipment. There's a lot of rigor to process. There's like protocols. There's like, all this machinery that's like just crazy. And then, I think as you're in it, you start learning, how it all works, what it all does, and all the benefits that come from it. So I think, for us, having worked in the industry now, like adjacent, is like it's been about 14 years. And I think, myself definitely drink the Kool-Aid, like really understand nuclear. And it's funny, as people join Big Red Oak, whether as employees or whether as consultants, I see the same transition happen. Like, they start working with us and they're like, okay, who are you working with? It's nuclear. And they're like, what? What's that? And as they dig in and as they learn, and some have actually converted, had kind of a knee jerk, a negative reaction to nuclear. And as they learn more about it and understand the role that it plays in the supply mix and in achieving climate change goals, easily become easily converted because the stories there is just not told. And so I think that, there's a number of things that actually they very much align to us working in nuclear, both from a value standpoint, but in a what our skill set and what we're built to actually do to be able to create more converts and to be able to bring that story out to the world.
Yeah, okay, and I think this is a good moment to talk about some of the work that we have done because, again, we've been talking about this kind of growing sector that we're a part of, and I think it shouldn't be missed either that I don't know, it just seems like every week right now, clean energy, nuclear, whatever, it's gaining more momentum again. People are talking about it. It's a bipartisan issue. You're seeing a lot of consensus building. You're seeing a lot of focus on it. And we're kind of riding that wave too. So looking at Big Red Oak, like in your experience and working on some great projects over the years, what are some pivotal moments or campaigns that you feel like have really kind of set Big Red Oak apart? Like, what's really set us apart in the space? Because, again, I think we're early here. I don't know if there's a whole lot of people doing what we're doing in North America at the level that we're doing it. So, what kind of experiences or moments or campaigns ring a bell for you in terms of what have really set us apart?
Yeah, sure. Well, and I think like, I mean, I think there's a number of aspects to that question or what goes into, a favorite project, let's say. I think there's, definitely approaching it from sort of the creative potential of the project or like, like I don't know, how creative was it? How much were we able to flex in that space? I think the other aspect is like how integrated, how sort of like that coming back to sort of that multimedia, how integrated was the approach? Did it bring in all types of different media? Was it distributed across like very saturated across all channels? Was it cohesive? And then I think the other piece to that really was like, you know, how well did the work that we bring like solve the problem as well? And so, I think some of I would say like one of my favorite ones are like more of those like complex problems, like where there's, I don't know, it's a bit of a puzzle to figure out. We were very much involved in the like establishing Ontario's nuclear advantage, which is an advocacy site for the nuclear industry that brings in of its members, unions, suppliers, utilities, other associations, all rallying around a unified message advocating for nuclear. So prior, that organization didn't exist. So we were part of setting that up as an organization. And in doing so, there's a lot of logistics, there's a lot of content that needs to be created, there's a lot of communications that needs to go out to bring members in and to build a community around that. So, I think that was a good project to be a part of because I think it was an important thing to ramp up in this transition. I think right now there's a lot of favorability around nuclear from politicians, from the public. Certainly always has been from industry. But I think that there's more people on side than there have been. But back when we started ONA, Ontario's Nuclear Advantage, there wasn't. So there was still some uncertainty in terms of the role that nuclear was going to play in the overall energy supply mix. And I think some of the work, some of the campaigns that we had launched from that platform were influential in terms of I guess being the platform to be able to lobby government to be able to position nuclear favorably for that mix. It since has been involved in advocating for the like NWMO's deep geological repository. It was used for positioning, again, like a good place in the long-term energy plan back. I don't know when that was, 2008 maybe, is a guess. And it's like, and it's being used now, um, again, sort of, really sort of promoting, um, commitment from the provincial government to stay the course for nuclear and to engage the public to be able to also have that backing and reassurance that nuclear is the right way to go. So I think that was a project that I was, very proud of us being a part of because it's lasted and it's been a good tool for the industry to be able to use. So it's rewarding, I think, having been at the foundation and the build of that platform.
Maybe it's tied to ONA, maybe it's something else, but following a similar thread there, when we talk about storytelling, in this sector, is there a story that you could share around storytelling, kind of transforming a campaign or a client's success and engaging with an audience in the clean energy space? Because we talk about it all the time. We talk about it till we're blue in the face. And probably some people want to hear some examples of where we've seen storytelling actually affect a campaign or a client in a really positive way.
Yeah, like I think one of the I think one of the I think like a really cool that touches on a number of those pieces. Definitely like on the creativity side, because it was a video series that we had launched. This was with Bruce Power and their MCR, the MCR work that they were doing. So I guess like this story is they were bringing in, a pretty massive automation uh, project with robots and like assembly lines and all kinds of cool machinery. But there was, I think there was like some apprehension in terms of going down that road, particularly with unions, with workers, making sure that they were not feeling any sort of threat of replacement or redundancy, but engagement. And I think there was also a factor of having that kind of alignment of messaging with leadership, with management, and with the workforce. So it, is a challenging project. And I think while we're working with our partners at Breeze Power to, conceive and create these sort of stories, like I think it really, what we pulled off was something that was, I mean, the videos are super cool, and I think, it actually positions the workers where they, you can see this sort of pride that they have in being able to work on a program that brings this kind of cutting edge technology to bear. They're a part of it, so it's like they're not threatened, but they're embracing the work that's being done. So I think, the challenge was really answered with some really compelling and engaging content that was released in a serialized manner, shared on social media. And I think the response definitely that we saw on social media was, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, it's been a really great project and great collaboration with the Breeze Power team on that one. When you look at the role of strategic marketing, kind of zooming out, like storytelling's part of that, but overall, when you're looking at marketing and the strategy behind it in in evolving energy companies, right? Because I think the industry still has a lot of growing up to do when it comes to, marketing. I was just having a conversation with somebody in the industry yesterday, and they were talking about this very idea of like a lot of people in clean energies, particularly nuclear, more so than some of the other ones, they purposefully didn't talk and didn't communicate because they were like, you know what, people are busy doing other things. We don't want to bring more kind of temperature to what we're doing because it brings a lot of like unwanted questions. But then you also start looking a little suspicious. It's like a double-edged sword, right? And now in 2025, people are interested. I think people are more willing to take a look. We know we have several problems. We have an energy deficit. We're looking for that long, stable power source that nuclear can provide. But then just more broadly speaking, I think there's just more interest across clean energy as a whole. What does strategic marketing have to do with that? And where can Big Red Oak as a strategic marketing partner help a company evolve in that space? Especially for people that are dipping their toes for the first time. It's a lot. It can be a lot. It can be daunting. There's just a lot of preconceived notions. It can cost money. Like, these are all things floating around people's head. How does Big Red Oak tackle something like that?
It's funny, like, I don't know, maybe I have a problem with like, maybe I have a problem with marketing. Like, I think marketing means so many different things to so many different people, even the marketers. Like, there's SEO marketing, there's, digital marketing, there's experiential marketing, there's I mean, it's so broad. I think like, you know, I, I think like I feel like we're marketing all the time. Like I feel, even like with my kids, I'm marketing to like, get them to go to bed on time. You know, like what are the benefits of going to bed on time? What are the benefits of not staying up all night and eating candy and, whatever? Like, I mean, I think if you sort of reduce it down to you're trying to influence an audience to take some sort of action, and I think this sort of umbrella of marketing is like, okay, well, we got all kinds of different tools we can bring into the fold, whether they're the right ones or wrong ones. I think again, the way that we're sort of seeing it in this kind of like, reductive manner is like, what do you need to do? Like, what are you trying to do? Because then let's see what marketing looks like in the context of what your challenge is, or what you want to achieve, what your goal is. Then we can figure out what kind of marketing plan or program do we need to bring to the table. We're not just going to sell video. That might not be the right thing to do. We're not going to, sell a website. Maybe that's not the right thing to do. We need to, start with what the challenge, problem, or opportunity may be, to then figure out what that marketing strategy should be. So and again, it's like we've got all of these tools to draw from, but starting at that place. So, and I think, we're talking about this. It's like there's huge opportunity, for the industry to expand. There's certainly, while it's not, necessarily a threat that's on the horizon, since we're talking about, renaissance. But, I think you talk to some people who've been in the industry for a long time, and, you know, you can see them kind of cringe when they hear renaissance, because they're like, well, we've already been through like two or three renaissances before this. But I think, you look at some of the threats like to nuclear, historically, like there have been incidents that have happened, like Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, Fukushima. I think, you know they may have been, I guess there could have been a public trust, or erosion of public trust could have been mitigated, I think, had there been, proactive, uh, and honest, communications with the public. I think that when people don't know what the story is, they're going to fill in the story themselves. And at that point, you don't really have control over what that story will be. So I think, from that standpoint, there's a good opportunity to engage, good or bad, is get ahead of that story. I mean, that's kind of like journalism 101 too, right? Get ahead of the story, or PR, right? Um
Well, yeah, nuclear's kind of fallen into this. If we're talking specifically about nuclear, they've let other people tell their story for them, and it's usually not a good story, right? And when you give those examples of things that a lot of people, at least on the periphery, know about, they're mainly negative when you really start putting a magnifying glass to them, you're like, "Oh, wait a second, like, what I know a lot of times isn't true," and I can say that because I knew about these things too, and then you start looking at them, I'm like, a lot of the information that I knew about it was actually not right. But nobody really had that on his dialogue. They didn't market it, they didn't storytell, they didn't communicate it, like, whatever you wanna dress that word up as, they didn't do a lot of that, so there's a lot of power in that. But, like, another thing that you hear a lot of people say is like, "Well, we're dealing with complex things. How do we communicate this?" You're dealing with a lot of like engineering, you're dealing with a lot of science and STEM. These things aren't always necessarily easy to communicate. That's what we hear. How is storytelling for you, in your experience, been a tool to extrapolate some of that information and then make it digestible for, an average person? Because I think that is some of the challenge too. There's a lot of esoteric kind of jargon and like acronyms and stuff that people don't really understand. And that can be a little bit of an othering. It's a barrier for a lot of people. How have you seen storytelling and communication work in distilling some of that communication challenge down?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of come back to like that sort of leaning into the curiosity and um our instinct to dig deep. I think it's actually beneficial that we're not scientists or engineers or you know, in the STEM stream of things, that we're coming at it from the, creative and more journalistic standpoint, because we need to engage with those scientists and engineers and technicians to understand some of the aspects so that we can sort through them to turn them into a story. I mean, if it's engineer to engineer, well, they can talk themselves, because they're using the same language. If we're talking about a utility or a supplier, like you know talking about like community engagement or reaching the general public, then I think that's where we really, can lend a hand in being able to take some of that information and digest it and process it in a way that it's, one, accessible to us and by virtue of that, accessible to the public. Um, and yeah, I guess, yeah, I don't know. I do feel it that, we are like we're in the industry, but we're a little bit adjacent. We're enough removed, I think, that that we can be sort of a bridge from, industry to the public. And then I think even in there's obviously a number of different types of needs, whether it's or as I said, like what's the goal, what's the opportunity, what's the challenge, like whether it's like a recruitment issue, or whether it's an employee engagement issue, or whether it's a business development sales opportunity for you know the suppliers, trying to communicate their value proposition to prospective customers. I think that there's different levels of the kind of narrative, like, if we're talking about a sales initiative, it's about snapping interest very quickly. We're not at the point where we're talking about like you know the the specs and the stats and the performance and the whatever. Like, we're talking about the value proposition of whatever uh the company may be selling, whether like product or service. So, I think that it's at that sort of first step is really about, creating a very compelling story that is easy to understand, and ideally want you to learn a little bit more. And then you sort of dig in. And the storytellers will change, I think, as you sort of, move through that funnel, let's say. At some point is you're going to be talking to an engineer because you're going to want to know the engineering specs, or you're going to want to know all of that stuff. At that point, it's like our job's done because they're already engaged. They're talking to the right people, or if it's a recruitment, they're talking to the hiring manager, whatever, right? But
Looking ahead, which I is hard to do because, you know, we don't know always what's gonna happen tomorrow, and there's so much happening today that it's hard to keep up. But looking ahead, in your opinion, what emerging trends do you foresee for, like, the clean energy sector? And, like, specifically, like, how does Big Red Oak prepare to help clients navigate these changes? I think things like AI, emerging technologies, the ongoing geopolitical landscape, regu yeah, regulators, like, but that's vast. That's so many different components. Like, what are some of those trends that you think are key? Maybe that's really the question. Which one should we focus on and kind of turn out the noise? And how do we prepare as Big Red Oak to help our clients with
yeah, I
those?
mean, I'm not gonna pretend to be any sort of, like, I'm sitting the furthest away from master control of, the way the world works as anyone.
That can be good though. That can be
Oh,
good sometimes
for
because 'cause you're
sure.
not lost in the
Yeah, but I mean,
sauce, you know?
yeah, it's crazy. The world's crazy. Like, there's all kinds of the political situations are like, in constant flux, and AI is like, constantly evolving. Like no one can keep up to that. I've my heart goes out to the regulators, like, understanding and getting trying to get ahead of how AI is going to, be used in this industry. Like, on all levels. It's just it moves fast, and it's like, it's a snowball rolling down a hill. It's not gonna stop it. And I don't think we wanna stop it. I think it all plays an important role. It's how to harness it. And I think from our standpoint, it's how do you communicate about it? How do you talk about it? Whether it's, the opportunity to be able to use it. So it's like sort of the benefits of what can be realized. As is the case with, the automation. Like there was AI that's being used as part of this. Like, this is going to streamline a lot of operational aspects of businesses. It's going to, increase the, you know, definitely the productivity and outputs and quality, and, I think there's a lot to gain. But again, as I said in that case, it's about, not making it scary, getting ahead of that narrative, telling the story honestly of what it like the role that it's going to play. Again, it's like, in the absence of that, people are gonna probably go down some dark places about, I was gonna the robots are gonna take over. But I think the role that we can really play is being able to, like, the way that we can slow that down is by, being thoughtful, being empathetic, being creative in how we tell the story of what is being done here, what's being looked at, how this will enrich everyone's, you know, lives, work lives, or whatever. So I think that that's sort of, and as you said, right, like the trends are, yeah, AI and policy changes and regulatory protocols or um, policies. So it's, yeah, I think that we as communicators play a role in being able to distill that down and be able to give people reassurance, comfort, and excitement and enthusiasm to go off wonderfully and peacefully into the future.
Okay, as we wind down here, I wanna ask you this final question. This is a question I've been wanting to ask you the most, actually, so I saved it for last. When it's on the list, and I'm asking you to give some sage advice, your favorite thing to do. What advice would you give to industry leaders about taking something like storytelling and harnessing the power of it to drive clean energy, right? Like, what advice would you give in your years of working in this industry generally, and then more specifically within clean energy? You must have something that you always come back to that you could give industry leaders about harnessing the power of storytelling.
Well, I guess if you are, leading, and if you are like using storytelling as part of that, then keep doing it. And if you're not, why are you not? Like, you need to do that. If you're a leader, you got, underneath you humans. And, as humans, we all engage and respond to stories. It's the way we're wired. Our minds go to stories. That's what we remember. Like, as little kids, we're raised on stories, and that never changes. I think that that's inherent in who we are as human beings. You don't have to tell stories to robots. You have to tell stories to humans. And as a leader, you are leading humans. So I just kind of feel like storytelling is part of the recipe for succeeding in being a good leader.
Yeah, that's good. Humans, not robots. That's the takeaway, right? Like, we've gotta communicate to each other, especially in the world as it's developing right now at the rapid pace. It sometimes feels like when you go online, it's like, it's just robots talking to each other now, So it's like,
Yeah, yeah,
at its
yeah,
core, since the dawn of time, the cave paintings, it's
yeah,
always
yeah,
been about storytelling. So,
yeah.
I think that's a good
I'd
place
I'd
to
also say, I mean, be on the right side of the story too, right? Like, there's a lot of stories, like, not good stories, definitely not honest stories that are being told. So yeah, I mean, you know, or at least, we're always going to be on the right side of the stories that we're telling. And that just, yeah, that's to align to your
For
value
sure.
system.
Well, thanks, Lee, for coming on. I guess in closing, most people are going to be finding this podcast through our channels already. But like, if you want to check out what we're doing, they want to talk to us. Like, what's the best way for people to like reach out and start having a conversation with Big Red Oak?
Well, I think they should just go to definitely go to our website. I think the address there is connect@bigredoak.com. And any of us, I don't think we're not trying to be strangers online. So I think, we should be, we're definitely accessible, and look forward to meeting new friends all the time. So
For sure. Well, thanks for coming on.
thanks.
Thank you for listening to Clean Currents, where we explore the people and ideas shaping our clean energy future. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe and share this episode, and check out our work at bigredoak.com. We'll see you next time on Clean Currents.